Errol Spence Terence Crawford will be a legacy-defining fight, or is it? What's good, everybody? It's your boy, Cardinal Red Sports. Let's talk about it. Alright, y'all. So, the question is being asked. Terence Crawford versus Errol Spence Jr. Will this be a legacy-defining fight?
Yes!
If one of these guys, which one of them's going to take a loss, you know, I guess it could be a tie, it could be a draw or whatever, but I highly doubt that. So one of these guys is most likely going to take a loss. Is that loss going to affect their career and their legacy in the future? If, let's say, Terence Crawford takes a loss in this fight, is he going to retire, you know, after? Because most likely there'll be a rematch. And I think if he loses the first one, he'll most likely lose the second one. I think he's at that point in his career where nothing's going to get better. You know, he's not going to redefine the way he fights. So if Errol Spence is able to dominate him for, 12 rounds, or is able to knock him down or out, or just win the fight outright, then I think most likely Terence Crawford would take 2 losses. And will that, at that point, be his legacy, that he had a good career at the lower weight classes, but once he got to 147, he only fought mediocre competition, and when he faced up with a great fighter, he took 2 losses. Is that going to be the definition of Terence Crawford's boxing career if he goes down to Errol Spence Jr. twice or even once? And once again, will he retire? Especially if he retires after that, I think that will have a negative effect on his legacy and how he's remembered in the sport of boxing.
Hey, hell no! Man, come on!
And the same goes for Errol Spence. Let's say Errol takes a loss to Terence. Terence is able to dominate him with foot speed and hand speed and angles, and somehow Terence Crawford pulls it off and looks spectacular doing it. Not only does it once, but does it twice. Does Errol Spence still move up to 154 pounds to try to fight a larger fighter? Because at that point, he would have gotten beaten by the smaller guy, the naturally smaller guy, the guy who came from a lower weight class, the guy who supposedly been chasing him the whole time. And I think, for Errol, if he takes a loss or 2 losses, I do think that it's going to impact him more. Does he retire? Does he try to move up? I think because there's been so much build-up and he's built himself up as this unbeatable guy. He's had all these belts for all this time. There's going to be a lot of people poking fun, for lack of a better word, at the fact that, they'll say that he ducked Terence Crawford all this time just to take 2 losses to him, and he didn't deserve his position in any way because he lost to Terence Crawford.
So I walk with an emperor struck, though the temperature's up and the heat is overwhelming. I'm yelling, forgive them. They know not when the wind blows, so how should we expect them to know the secret of life, death, and the resurrection itself? I tell you, ignorance kills, but so do being broke. Going days without a meal, unskilled in every field, cause the school system missed them. Released from prison, the workforce is still dissing, listen.
So, I think that would hurt Errol more than it would even hurt Terence. I do think that Terence would be in position to, he's going to definitely take some heat if he loses to Errol, and if he loses twice, he's really going to take some heat. But I think he'll more than likely retire if he loses twice, to where I think Errol would try to move up, because I think pride would be one of those things to where he feels like he's the naturally bigger guy, and maybe it was a fluke versus Terence. If he was to lose to Terence Crawford and lose twice, it was a fluke, it was the speed, difference. But if I move up, those guys are slower, those guys are heavier. I can perhaps dominate them the way Terence Crawford dominated me, because I'll be the naturally quicker, because I'm naturally slightly smaller than a lot of those guys at 154. So, You know, I do feel like it's a legacy-defining fight when you look at it like that. I do feel like one of these guys, listen, they're not going to be the same after July the 29th. One of these guys most definitely will be staring down the barrel of retirement, most likely, after this fight. One of these two guys will most likely be the butt of all the jokes in the boxing world for at least a year after that fight. So it's definitely going to be legacy defining.
I was spoiled, and Suzuki's was only 10 grand. So I was like 15, and I'm like, yo, Mom, can you buy me a car? And she's like, I'm not buying you a Suzuki. And me, I'm like, all right. So now I got it kicked out of Dwight. I'm in a black school, and I'm seeing crack, and I'm like, all right, I go to 142nd Street. These were the first guys that hit me with work.
Whose legacy would it hurt the most to take a loss? I think Errol, because Errol has been champion for so long, because Errol has, you know, built himself up as the unstoppable force. If he takes a loss, and especially to Terence Crawford, especially twice, then people will definitely look at Errol Spence different. Even though I still feel like he would have had the better resume and he went through the tougher fights to get to that undisputed fight. I think because of the way boxing is now and people's attention spans being so small, that I think people are gonna forget about his road to Terence Crawford, and they're gonna only remember the fact that he lost to Terence Crawford. And I think that's kind of gonna go for both guys, but especially Errol. And because the Terence Crawford fans are the way they are, like they don't accept reality for what it is, like ever, and they don't ever want to look at the whole picture. They just want to see what benefits Terence Crawford. So I think if they were to win and come out on top of this situation, then it's going to be a lot of hurt feelings off the back of this fight, I believe. And, you know, it's all going to depend on how much you like Errol Spence and Terence Crawford. If you're a real Errol Spence and Terence Crawford fan, like hardcore, you know, I enjoy Errol Spence. I enjoy Terence Crawford less because he doesn't fight the best competition, but I do enjoy watching Errol. But I wouldn't call myself an Errol fanatic or ultra fan of Errol or anything like that. But he is the best welterweight, and you know, I would love to see Errol fight Pacquiao. Another topic for another day. But I think that because Errol has the bigger name, is the bigger figure, he would have gotten taken out by the underdog. And whenever the underdog beats, you know, that high and mighty guy, you know, that guy on the top of the mountain, you know, it always makes for a great story, and the ending is always going to define the story. You know, how did the story actually end? And if he loses to Terence Crawford and loses twice to Terence Crawford, people are only going to remember the ending of the story, and I don't think Errol's going to be able to live that down for the rest of his career. Terence Crawford, the same, but once again, he's considered the underdog, so he's going to get a lot of leeway for being the underdog. Crawford fans, man, they're wild fans. You know, salute to all the Terence Crawford fans out there, but they got their own way of doing things, man. So y'all let me know what y'all think about all that down in the comment section below. That like button for me. Sure. Subscribe. Holler at me on all social media platforms, Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, Twitter. More than likely to get a response on the tube, so holler at me over there. If you want to collabo, feel free to hit my Gmail. It is a flock of cards at gmail.com. And we are mine.
You niggas better get more cream. You niggas broke like the levees down in New Orleans, and it ain't no fixing it. Engineer mixing it. Had to wear a coat cause it's cold like Switzerland. Got the hood blistering, all the niggas listening. Throw back Weber, shorty thought I played for Michigan. Nah, it's the bill, dude. Still, here's what she'll do. Let a nigga cut long as I bring a pill through. And you don't want nothing with it. Calling off control, Grey Goose got me shitty. I go hard for the digits, got the keys to the city. I'ma show you how to get it. You don't want nothing with it. Mine on the digits, if you hating, you can get it.
Got the keys to the city.
You don't want nothing with it. Mine on the digits, if you hating, you can get it.
Got the keys to the city.
You don't want nothing with it. Mine on the digits. If you hating, you can get it.
Got the keys to the city.
You don't want nothing with it. Mine on the digits. If you hating, you can get it.
Got the keys to the city.
I got the remedy, plenty weed, Hennessy. A little skinny freak, legs like a centipede. Y'all niggas got DL tendencies. Young keys flow 10 degrees. Hit the industry in the teeth, never scared if it's beat. Ass niggas if they know my name in the streets. These young niggas got it hot like Venice Beach. Shit is deep, seeing narcs riding in the Jeep. I'm on the grind, I ain't been home in the week. Listen when I speak, leave stab wounds in the beat. Riding in the fleet, stuffing hydro in the sweet. It's Louis Keys, nigga.